Hello, I'm Ellie from Nourishment Redacted, and welcome to Lioness Lifestyle Live.
And I'm Cristie from Meeting Wellness, and I'm so excited to meet with you this evening. And yes, new music. We will see if we can get the old song back. We're looking into licensing it, but we're gonna have to license it now, and we are looking into that. So until then, we have some new music. But thank you so much for joining us.
Adrian should be coming in any minute now. She's having some technical difficulties, but we are so excited about our guest tonight. Please get your questions ready. Put those QQQs and question marks so we can get you on the screen. We'd love to answer your questions for tonight's show.
And Ellie, I'm sorry to do this live on the air, but can you put in 10 for Adrian, please? Oh, I think she might be
she's on.
If you can put in 10. There she is, Adrian!
Woo!
Woo, woo, woo. We knew you'd make it. Awesome. So it is time for this week's Roar of the Week, everybody. So what we would love for you to do is when this episode is over, go to any one of our 3 channels and type us a comment because we always hunt through them and like to highlight one for the Roar of the Week. So from last episode, we got this lovely comment on Ellie's channel. So Tiffany says, I am living the lioness lifestyle. Yes, Woo! It's helping me with my own carnivore journey. So I love that, Tiffany. Thank you so much for being this week's Roar of the Week.
All right. Well, please, let's bring a big welcome. I want everyone to get so excited in the chat for our guest for tonight. So she is a 4th-year PhD student in integrative and functional nutrition. She's an ex-vegan, now carnivore, and she's researching type 2 diabetes for her PhD using the carnivore diet. So if you have any of those questions for that on those topics, and we're going to be talking about lots more, I'm so happy to welcome her today. Let's bring her in. Hey.
Hello, Lionesses. How are you?
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us, Courtney.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to chat and meet with you guys a little bit more.
Fantastic. We would love to thanks for coming on the show, by the way. That's awesome. Could you please tell our audience about yourself? I gave some sneak peeks. We'd love to know some more of those juicy details. Tell us how you found the carnivore diet, what you're currently doing with school, and we'd love to get to know you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for such an awesome introduction, Ellie. So my name is Courtney Langlois, and as Ellie already stated, I am a 4th-year doctoral student working on my PhD in integrative and functional nutrition. I came across the carnivore diet a little over a year ago through some close friends of mine, but my journey to carnivore actually kind of began in a sense when I was quite young. I actually first became a vegetarian when I was around 14 years old as a freshman in high school. And up until last year, I have been living a plant-based lifestyle as an athlete, as a student, as a researcher. And really my whole world has been pretty much encapsulated by the plant-based diet. And after this amazing transformation to carnivore, it's really hard to sit and look back and try to justify why and how I ever lived the way that we did. But I think that it just helps to create this really awesome story for why I'm here, how I've got here, what I've gone through to be here, and why I'm so passionate about my research, and why I think that this way of eating is so impactful for anybody who is really truly looking to step into that world of optimal health.
Wow, that's amazing. So you said functional nutrition. Can you explain what that is for those of us that might not know?
Absolutely. So I think we're all pretty familiar with what functional medicine is as a whole. And for anyone who in the audience might be new to the term, it's really not a brand new concept, but it's taking the best of both like a conventional medical paradigm that we're all so familiar with in westernized countries, and really bringing it together with Eastern medicine and the best practices of Ayurveda and ancient Chinese medicine, and bringing together all of those principles to work from a systems-based approach, which means looking at individuals not just as an illness, but looking at them as people who have interconnected organs that are all communicating and working together that lead to the development of a disease. And so what our aim is in the functional medical space is to uncover that root cause, as you'll hear very frequently, the root cause of your illness, and work from a mind, body, and spiritual aspect to help you get through and into a state of health through holistic means. So it's very less dependent on pharmaceutical intervention. However, we also recognize that there is a time and a space and a condition where we might need pharmaceutical intervention, but the goal is to ultimately get you out of that dependence on pharmacology and into a reality of living and thriving in your health. And if that means being on supplements, then so be it. But it's my personal philosophy, and this is how we get into the nutrition aspect, that on a carnivore diet, you can reach into that state of optimal health and resolving so many of the chronic issues that our world is plagued with. And I choose plagued appropriately because we are at an epidemic with obesity and diabetes and hypertension and cardiovascular disease. I mean, these are the top killers of people in today's world. And so through functional nutrition, we take all of our training in functional medicine and we approach disease resolution from a lifestyle medicine perspective of really focusing on food and dietary interventions.
Wow, that sounds like right up my alley. Like this is what I've been, I mean, without putting that label on it, right? Like the YouTube education that I got about, meat-based diet and also how all the symptoms, even symptoms I didn't even know I had, improved by changing to this way of eating. So you started off, you said, as a vegetarian and you were an athlete. Wow. Like, how did that go for you? Like, why did you start vegetarianism? And then how were you able to be an athlete eating like that? How did it go?
Yeah, so really great question. It's a bit of a kind of touch and go type emotional story. So if I kind of hit the brakes and transition real quick, please forgive me because I really try on camera today. But I was raised eating a very conventional, healthy diet in the sense of very whole foods, very farm to table, not processed, very down to earth and humble roots. But that included meat, vegetables, and plenty of fruits. And I was an athlete my whole life. I was a cheerleader. I played basketball. I tried to play football for my high school team. They wouldn't let me. I ran track and field. I ran cross country. And I was a pretty good athlete. I remember prior to becoming vegetarian, I was a pole vaulter, which requires both speed and strength. And I made it to the state championship my freshman year and made some really great titles. So my life revolved around sports, and I made varsity my freshman year of basketball. And through the high school culture, as we are all so very well aware, and thankfully it is more talked about today, but a really toxic culture actually brought me into a very negative mental health space. And this was at a time where, heroin chic was trending, and being as thin as possible was trending, and being an athlete, I was already very petite. However, I kind of developed anorexia and body dysmorphia. And this was around 2008, 2009, and living in, rural Maryland where I grew up, we didn't have the best internet. So it was dial-up. So what you could get in a few minutes before the phone rang was all you could get. So in the limited research that I had, I learned that a vegetarian diet would promote weight loss. And mind you, I was 5'8" and maybe 100 pounds in high school. And I remember taking a body fat test in gym at the peak of my, the starting peak of my mental health decline and eating disorder. And the reading was 7% body fat. And I just remember I'm shaking, trying to figure out, how am I going to lose that 7%? How am I going to get this as low as possible?
Wow.
I lost my period for a while. And it just became this mission to lose weight that I didn't have. And so when I went vegetarian, I thought that would help. It wasn't really doing a whole lot because of my activity level for weight loss. So that's when I started kind of shuttling food off my plate and trying to say I wasn't hungry and getting out of meal times and doing all of that. So as an athlete, my performance dropped dramatically. I kind of began eating more in a sense because I actually started passing out during events. Like I would be running a cross country race and just kind of like keel over in pain. And my mom would find me on like the hill. And I remember they came and took me off in an ambulance one day. And it was at that point that I realized I need to be fueling more in order to, and I hate to say it, but my mindset at the time was to get away with, kind of starving myself without making my parents think that something was wrong in a sense. I was very quiet about it. I didn't talk to my parents. I didn't let anybody in on how I was battling these inner demons. So my performance after adding more nutrients back into my diet was somewhat linear in improvement. However, I still didn't have the strength. I didn't have the agility. I didn't have that burst of power that you need as an athlete. And in basketball, I was weak. I was falling down a lot more. I wasn't sustaining any major injuries, but there was an absolute decline in performance between low caloric intake, low nutritional quality, and then a stark difference between adequate nutrition and low energy, right? With that vegetarian diet versus now as a carnivore athlete and just having constant energy and power and the ability to just crank through a resistance training workout and in the fasted state. So when you can kind of compare all three, I mean, massive differences.
There's so many people that are currently suffering with anorexia nervosa. Do you have any tips for someone who maybe for someone who has a loved one who knows someone who's suffering with this? Do you have any tips for those people and maybe how an animal-based diet or even a carnivore diet could help with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing that I'm going to say is if you are somebody who is struggling with disordered eating or body dysmorphia and just not feeling comfortable in your skin and feeling like you need to not eat or to step into that bulimic binge and purge to try to get the feelings of comfort, seek help, right? Don't go through it alone. I battled alone for almost 15 years before I even told my husband about it. And the difference in the way that you can heal your body and get to a state of positive mentality and positive mental health, it really only begins when you find that strength. So find somebody you trust to speak to in the first place and seek whatever treatment is necessary and within your limits. However, you also have to kind of take that with the edge and the recognition that getting mental health services and eating disorder services are very costly. I mean, even back 15 years ago, it was not something that my family would have been able to afford. So why should I even talk about it was my thought process, right? And the wonderful thing about a meat-based, a keto, a carnivore, and animal-based diet, however way you choose to split your hairs and go about this lifestyle, is that the brain needs the nutrition from meat. And Dr. Georgia Ede is actually doing a lot of really phenomenal research right now. So if you are looking to understand the connection between the mind and the diet, I would point anybody in the direction of her and her research.
So were you vegan until a year ago?
Yeah.
And so you were able to still have the brain function and everything to be going through college and your master's and your PhD?
It was a challenge.
Have you seen a significant improvement since adding meat?
Oh, absolutely. And I really, really wish that like I could go back and do it all over again because I find at times that I get into conversations with people and, even calls like this where I feel this really great sense of trepidation because I I feel like I don't know much. Like if you sit here and ask me to recall something really incredibly specific about physiology or, what is the pathway of zinc, right? When you're in a depleted state, like I don't have the most clear recollection of absolutely everything. And so for me, getting through college was incredibly hard. I would go to class and I would sit there and I'm absorbing everything and I'm an audible learner. So, it might not look like I was paying attention, but I'm sitting there and I'm trying to just take it all in. And then I remember really, really struggling in a lot of classes, especially when professors would go so incredibly fast that you couldn't actually keep up, or they really relied on, more textbook style learning. And that was something that the brain fog was huge for me. Right. So just getting through a day to day and kind of remembering where I was, what was on the schedule, where I needed to be, a conversation that maybe I just had, what my professor said 5 minutes ago was a challenge. Right. So I actually really struggled in undergrad and I had to kind of learn how to push through in a sense. And I didn't feel it as much as my master's or even up to this point with my doctorate, because it's almost like I learned how to work through what I didn't know was a nutrient deficiency, and what I didn't realize was my diet causing me to struggle. Right. So now I feel like I can sit down and read multiple, academic journal articles and regurgitate the information, or, build on to something that I'm writing without that sense of, oh my gosh, I now have to go read each of these articles 5 more times because I can't remember what they said. Right. So I feel like I have the ability to learn in a way that I've never had before. And it's really incredible.
Yeah, I've experienced similar things. As teachers, we have to go to like trainings at the district office and things like that. And it's like long, right? And we're sitting there like, oh, usually, right? Get me out of here for 8 hours. The last one I went to, it wasn't until about the last 30 minutes. I think that's fine. But yeah, I was there, I was present, I was engaged, I was listening, I was interested.
Yeah.
Instead of just being like, when is this going to be over? Because you just can't take it. Because I'm telling you, we teachers, we have to teach a certain way. But then when we go to be trained, they never teach us the way that we are supposed to teach our students. It's very much like want, right? And then we just have to listen. So I totally feel you on, being more academically, with it, eating this way. How did you manage to transition? Like, how did you first hear about carnivore, and what convinced you to, that's such like an opposite switch. Like, what convinced you to give it a try?
Yeah. So honestly, and I can't make this story up. I have some very, very, very dear friends she's a PA, her husband is an MD, and they heard about carnivore. And this was maybe year 1 or year 2 of my doctoral journey. So maybe 3 to 4 years ago. And before many of these big players in the game were really talking about carnivore as well. And so they actually switched to carnivore, and we had this like ongoing debate for, I think it was about a year, of like them saying, oh, well, what about this? And me saying, well, this is what this is leading to. And, looking at all the literature from what we have. And if you look at the majority of studies out there, like, as we all know, there's very little scientific literature on carnivore, right? So I could find all of the reasons to argue my position from a plant-based diet because, hey, guess what? Those are the studies that are out there. I didn't know that they were being funded by Big Pharma. I didn't know that they were being funded by Mr. Gates, right? You didn't read about the nuances and the plant toxicology that goes under the radar. And so it was really just this ongoing debate for about a year. And it got to the point where my friend texted me, she was going to go on a hike or something. And she texted me a picture of butter chips in a bag. And I was like, that's it. I've had enough. I can't take it anymore. So I was like, I literally stopped whatever I was doing. And I very clearly remember going to my computer and spending like 3, 4, 5 hours trying to find the literature on how the butter was going to cause heart disease. And hey, guess what? Here's a study that says it doesn't happen. Here's another study, and here's another study, and here's all of this compiling evidence against me after I've already spent a year trying to position my claim against them to come out on top with plant-based. And so it got to that point, and it was in that very same day where I was like, oh my gosh, like, oh my stars. I've been eating this way for 15 years. No wonder I don't have energy. No wonder I can't remember diddly squat. No wonder, my pregnancies were so straining and so stressful and so painful. Like, no wonder I've been living this terrible way. But meanwhile, I'm doing what they say I should be doing, and I'm eating the way they say I should be eating. And I guess this is how health is supposed to feel, because otherwise I'm not doing anything wrong, right? So it literally turned into 5 hours at the computer and a big swipe on the refrigerator and in the pantry. I mean, beans, legumes, all these sources of fiber, all the everything. I mean, you can imagine a plant-based diet kitchen. And I was somebody who prided myself on making these really awesome from scratch plant-based meals that were elaborate and nutrient dense, and having already been so invested and learned so much about nutrition, I was planning out and calculating the micro and macronutrients for myself, my husband, and my 2 babies, and making sure that everything we were eating was meeting our requirements. So all that food went either in the trash or in a donate box, and we went shopping, and it was meat and butter and eggs and bacon, and we haven't gone back since.
Wow.
Your husband think of this?
Yeah.
Oh, he loves it. He loves it. When we first started dating, I was a vegetarian, of course, and he thought it was a little strange. But at this point, it's 2016, 2015, so vegetarian is normal. And he's like, okay, que sera, sera. We move forward in life, and he actually really quickly came around to being vegetarian as well, and being vegan, and being fully supportive of me, because I had all the evidence and the science behind my claims. And he's like, okay, I trust you. And so ever since we met, it's just been not blind faith, but he has trusted me throughout this journey, and he loves carnivore too. It's great.
So when you transitioned, it was just cold turkey, huh? You just threw away all the vegan food and went for all the carnivore food. Did you have the transition symptoms that many of us have? Any keto flu or bathroom issues or things like that?
Yeah, I think that it's kind of hard for me to make that comparison. I don't feel like I had keto flu in the sense of that feeling that so many people were like, oh my gosh, I'm a brink away from death. I don't feel like I had that, but low energy, I was already low energy. GI distress, any changes to that? I don't know. I'm pretty sure I never got a diagnosis, but I'm pretty sure I had IBS for my whole life, right? Because I've been vegetarian and plant-based my whole life. So there were no abnormal differences. I was used to going to the bathroom 10, 12 times a day, and that was normal. So I don't feel like I had that keto flu, but I will say that if I step out of ketosis these days, or say I allow myself to have a treat every now and then, I definitely will feel it going back into it. Okay. So not at the start, because such a similar symptom, but am I, what's the word I'm looking for? Does it happen to me? Yes. Amelia, I'm looking for Amelia.
I've heard you say you were going to be carnivore only for 2024. How is that going?
It is going, Adrian. It is going. It is hard. I have definitely allowed myself to have some treats in the past, because, and as I've said, I was on Ellie's show in the past, my kryptonite is ice cream. And so in the past, I allowed myself probably a treat a little too often. But it's my philosophy about what 90% of my time looks like, and then what 10% looks like. That is huge, right? If 90% of your everyday is the standard American diet, sedentary lifestyle, that's a problem. If 90% of your time is carnivore, ketovore, animal-based, whatever you choose, and fitness, that is different. So allowing yourself to have a treat, a little break every now and then is going to have a completely different effect. 2024
Definitely
is
making
going.
it sustainable.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. Sometimes I wonder, like, if I want to ever bring back some plant foods or some fruit, but then I feel like I keep flip-flopping like fish. I'm like, no, but this, but this, So I completely understand that there's a lot of things in life that can stress us out. And if you go back to those old crutches, it can seem like, all the pain goes away, everything's fine all of a sudden, but then you might be feeling it the next day. So I appreciate your honesty with us. Not everyone is going to be as honest and transparent and say, like, I haven't been eating 100% carnivore all the time. And I think that's okay personally. There's some people who might disagree. Like I recently introduced garlic powder and pepper to my food, and I've had no reactions. And I'm like, awesome, I'm healing. That's to me, that shows me that my gut is healing. And I know that's going to take longer for other people. So so I think it's so interesting that you were vegan during your pregnancy, and we talked a little bit about that, but I want to share a little bit about that with our audience tonight. Can you tell us, like, how being vegan and being pregnant, how did that go? And were they healthy? Did the doctors question anything, like, or they thought it was fine? Did they tell you to eat more meat, like, or protein?
Yeah. So sorry, my AirPods just don't like my ears. So I was vegan actually for both of my pregnancies. I had 2 pregnancies that ended up going to full term. With my first, I actually went into preterm labor at 30 weeks. I was able to keep him in there, and I got put on bed rest. But I was also really active throughout both of my pregnancies. I was in the gym at least 3 or 4 times every week. I wasn't an everyday, but I was still doing some moderate cardio as well as some moderate weight training. I definitely wasn't going ham, but it was really important to me, and I understood at the time that I needed to maintain my physical fitness, and that's something that my first pregnancy, I hadn't gone through my master's program yet. So I didn't really fully understand exercise physiology and the effects of pregnancy. So I took it a little more cautiously. And again, this was now 6 years ago, and there just wasn't that much information out there. And today's a completely different world. We have all these different sources of really valuable and really accurate information to help people who are pregnant get through a healthy pregnancy in the gym. But I was weak. I was really weak. I found myself really struggling with just the day-to-day activities. At the time, my husband and I were both working at the same orthodontic office. And, so prior to 30 weeks of gestation, I would get home and I would just have nothing left in the tank. I mean, just being at work every day was draining. And then just the constant poor sleep right on top of it. So not just pregnancy poor sleep, but vegan diet poor sleep. And it's hard to sit and say and make a comparison because I don't know any differently. But in my second pregnancy with my little girl who is about to be 4, I had gone through my master's, and I had kind of started that really tedious, and I don't want to say obsessive, but it was obsessive in calculating out micro and macro. So I found myself to have more strength when I was doing it to the best of my absolute knowledge and ability. But at the time I was working in dental again still, and I was actually bent over most of the day. And this was when COVID hit. October of 2020 is when you were working in healthcare, we really went into the state of not panic, but looking back, it was panic. And so my fluid intake actually decreased significantly because I wasn't allowed to go from like the clinic to the break room to get water or have a snack or anything. So it was like, if you were out and you weren't on your lunch break, you weren't allowed to go back and forth, and we weren't allowed to hide snacks in little nooks and crannies of the office like we used to. So I was really undernourished and underhydrated, which would also be called dehydrated when you have a brain that functions. And it was absolutely awful. We lived in a 2-story townhouse at the time, and I literally had to crawl myself up the stairs every single night because of sciatica pain, and just overall, I had nothing left to give.
Did they check your iron levels? Because they say that the iron in plants is more difficult to absorb than the iron
Yeah.
in meat. So did you ever have that checked?
Yeah, so all of my blood work came back normal. I never experienced my docs or my midwives, I guess, telling me that I needed to change anything. I was very transparent with them about the fact that I was doing vegan and vegetarian. I can't remember where I was at on that scale for both of them, but I I remember having conversations about, no, I'm not going to take prenatal vitamins. I actually took Flintstone vitamins, which is terrifying looking back. But I remember having conversations about how nuanced I was in my approach to managing my nutrition, and that I had actually spent all this time studying nutrition, and this is where I was at in my education, and my confidence in my ability to maintain a healthy pregnancy with the plant-based lifestyle, and making sure that I was eating sources of heme and non-heme iron, and trying to make sure that my protein was above and beyond what the RDA was, and mixed in with, I was calculating for my energy expenditure of being in the gym with both of those pregnancies as well. So I was doing so much math at all times. It was exhausting. And with the brain fog looking back, like, I can't sit here and say, oh yeah, they never argued with me, because they probably did. I mean, I have been in far too many very polite disagreements with medical providers about my diet. And at the end of the day, like, always just standing my ground and being confident. But I don't feel like there was ever much pushback or them saying, like, oh yeah, you need to go eat meat. I wish I could look back and be like, Courtney, you're being stupid. Like, go eat a steak, because you're going to feel so much better, and it's so good for the baby. But I remember delivering, and both times them being like, oh, the placenta is beautiful. Do you want to see it? No, I didn't want to see it. So healthy babies, both born full size, no issues with needing to go to the NICU. Just my little girl, she was about 6 pounds when she was born, but I attest a lot of that to the fact that I was really active, and during COVID, again, dehydrated and just not even getting 2,000 calories a day. So,
Did
yeah.
you have any issues with milk supply? Did you breastfeed?
I chose to not breastfeed for personal reasons. Yeah. So no issues that I know of.
So you didn't encapsulate your placenta.
No, I didn't. I didn't eat it. I didn't grill it. I didn't make it into art for the wall. No shame or hate for anybody who does that.
I know.
To each
I just
their
had
own,
a visceral reaction to that, but no, if anyone else wants to do that,
I did that.
each their own. Did you do
like
that,
a little
Adrian?
heart from the umbilical cord that they made me that's all dried.
Cute.
That's better than what we got. We got a baby box from my mother-in-law, and my husband's umbilical cord was just in this tiny little plastic bag. And I picked it up and I'm like, ah! And I went straight into the garbage, because he's almost 37. So let's just, I think it's time to put that to rest.
Does this kind of, I mean, I'm an instigator, so I'm sorry about this, but does this kind of make you want to have another baby so you can do it carnivore style? Because I kind of do, but I already have 4, so I'm not going to. But if you want to do it, let us know how it goes. We'll bring you back.
Yeah, to be determined. I've had baby fever for a minute, but I really need to get through school.
Yeah.
But for the comparative analysis, 100%. Yeah, I would love to.
Hearing you do all that tracking and everything, you're just so my cup of tea. And it's just crazy how, I met a vegan at the gym, and she was telling me how she had all this autoimmune illness, and I was like, me too. So I went all meat because it's low inflammation. She was horrified by what I said, and that I was killing all these animals. And I'm like, well, geez, I also have a farm, I said. And so I really care for my animals. I'll have to fix that, however I do that. But, and anyway, she was just horrified, but it really, when it comes down to it, we're kind of the same. We're both working towards being as healthy as we can. We've both done a ton of research. We both really care about nutrition in our bodies. So there's so much common ground there.
Love it.
Yeah, 100%.
You have a farm. We need to talk for sure.
I rehomed my farm, but for a minute I had 600 quail, 20 rabbits. We raised 100 meat chickens, and we were really like, let's self-sustain. But then now that I'm a carnivore, I've learned that all of those meats are very lean and not super sustaining. But the eggs were amazing. The little quail eggs, I was getting buckets. It was awesome.
Love it. That's awesome.
So, Courtney, speaking of getting through school, I would love to hear about this PhD you're writing. What is the specific topic and why are you writing that? What are your goals?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh gosh, how much time do we have left? No.
25 minutes.
I love my research. So my field is integrative and functional nutrition, which I've kind of given you the biggest, broadest definition. But within the world of integrative and functional nutrition, I have narrowed down to focusing on type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance. And what I'm investigating is the change in people's A1C and insulin from pre-carnivore to at least 6 months post-carnivore. So what I'm looking to do, and this is just I'm doing a quasi-experimental study. So I'm building this in the sense that it can be something that is built upon in the future, right? A lot of the data that we have now for, red meat is associated with heart disease. Those kinds of studies are what's called epidemiological studies. And what they do is they're just kind of population-based, and what they look at, X number of people in this area who say that they do X, Y, or Z, and they're looking at like the correlation between exposure, which would be the diet, the activity, the smoking, whatever they're looking at, and the outcome, right? So how many people from this population have this symptom, this disease, whatever it is that they're looking at, right? So those are called epidemiological studies, and they don't actually show cause and effect, right? So what I'm trying to do, because it's really easy to say, oh, well, this correlates to that, if you're not actually narrowing it down and looking at the specifics. And so my study is looking at the individuals who before carnivore had a pre-existing A1C value, which is your average blood glucose value from about 2 to 3 months prior to the blood work, the range being in pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes, which is 5.7 or above. To be diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, it's kind of right around the 6.4 to 7 range. And once you're higher than that, right, then we start talking about insulin and really intense medical interventions. But I'm looking at people whose A1C was 5.7 or above, a minimum of 3 months, and then they switch to carnivore. And you have to have been on the carnivore diet for at least 6 months to be included as a participant in my study. And so what I'm looking at is your A1C before and after carnivore, as well as your insulin levels during those times. And in addition, I'll be asking people about their food frequency. So how often are you eating red meat? How often are you eating eggs, bacon, butter, lard, tallow, ghee, right? A food frequency questionnaire that is really specific down to the carnivore diet to try to understand, because if you have somebody who's eating a lot of red meat versus a lot of chicken, as we all know, are very two nutritionally different animal products, right? So I'm trying to determine and just show that hopefully there is a decrease in A1C for people on the carnivore diet. There are some more nuances that might skew my results to show that carnivore doesn't necessarily improve A1C, which is why I want to look at insulin as well, because it's a much better marker at your glycemic control than A1C because of the way that the diet affects the red blood cells. So if that makes any sense, I kind of talk in circles and go back and forth. If you're tracking it all, pre and post carnivore diet, what was your A1C then? What is your A1C now? What carnivore foods are you eating and how frequently are you eating them? And if you are saying and stating that you're eating any sort of plant foods, then I'm sorry, you can't be included in my data set. But that's what I'm trying to do. And so my hope is that by choosing the experimental design that I've chosen, being quasi-experimental, which just means that it's almost to that level of experimental data, but it's not quite there. And the reason for that is because having not gotten my PhD yet, and this being a dissertation research project, and given the extensive literature that we have on the negative implications of red meat and eating this kind of diet, it makes it really, really hard to sit and convince an institutional review board that I can expose people to eating just red meat, salt, and water for at least 6 months and do some blood work pre and post. However, so that would be a randomized control trial, which is what everybody's looking for when they want the evidence on carnivore. My goal is to use this as a stepping stone to getting to that and being able to take this another step further. And then ultimately, I want to spend my career in research and academia, and then not just looking at A1C and insulin, but looking at all these other types of biomarkers for common metabolic diseases.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Big goals. And I'm like so excited to follow you to see what you do and where this goes. So basically you're saying once you finish this dissertation, that's going to kind of give, and you'll have the actual PhD after your name. That's going to give you like the clout that you need to like take this to the next level and the next steps.
That will give the institutional review board some evidence for me to sit and say, please let me have these people and give them this dietary regime and track their blood and see what actually happens to have a randomized control trial.
Okay.
And without them like throwing every single red flag in my face. And like, let me just say, and I know I don't sound super like educated in these kind of conversations, but like just getting to this point and getting to where I can do this study and having the approval to get here has been such, I don't understand that comment.
Proper human diet. So PhD, proper human diet. You'll have a PhD.
I love it. I love it. It went just right over for a minute. I love a good pun. Dr. Kenberry.
Sorry, I know.
No, it's okay. No, it's okay. I love a good joke, and it took me a minute. So my goal, this is a foundational study, and it's definitely not the end of the road. And it's been really, really hard to get to this point because, like, when I interviewed for my PhD, like to get into the program, they were like, well, what do you want to study? What do you want to research? What is your contribution to the world of academia, right? And 3 or 4 years ago, we didn't have as much plant-based diet research as we did at the time, and it was really trending upward. And so I was really into it. And of course, I was so passionate about the vegan diet. And so I just really couldn't wait to talk about how I wanted to use this diet to solve and help people with type 2 diabetes, which is where we're going with this. Growing up, I had a lot of people in my family who were type 2 diabetics, and I just really saw the challenges that they faced on a day-to-day lifestyle. And I was a little girl at the time, and like, I remember just them not being able to play. Like, I just wanted to play with my family members, and like, they just couldn't. Like, it was pills and insulin and finger pricks for constant glucose monitoring. And they couldn't do this and they couldn't do that because of obesity and the fatigue and just the energy and all of these things. And I remember being so young, and at the time, like, I didn't know anything about science as a 7-year-old, right? I didn't know anything about blood glucose control, but I look around and I see the standard American foods, right? For those on a diabetic diet, right? You can eat the same things as your healthy, normal friends and family can eat. You just have to have these medications. You just have to give your insulin. And I was like, there has to be a better way. Like, there has to be a better way, and there has to be a way to get people back to living and thriving in their every single day life, and for parents to be able to get down and play with their kids without having to worry about their blood sugar. Like, come on, there had to be a solution. So I didn't realize throughout my journey that this is where I was going to end up and that it was going to pull on those really young roots of my life. But here we are, and it's a huge problem, right? We're talking about 500 million people across the globe who are diabetic, and it's the 8th leading cause of mortality in the United States alone. And that's not even with like data from post-pandemic, right? So the data is skyrocketing, and this disease is affecting more and more people at an increasing rate. And if the guidelines that we had were actually effective for managing and improving, we shouldn't be seeing a parabolic exponential curve on this graph. Like, if the medications alone were enough to resolve the disease, we wouldn't be where we are today. I mean, insulin was invented in 1921. Why have we not improved since then? So it's an uphill battle, but my goal is to be able to hopefully, in some small corner of the world, help people with diabetes or insulin resistance or metabolic disease of any kind, because ultimately they have pretty much the same causes and the same triggers and the same, pathogenic cascade of events that cause the disease to manifest. Through the carnivore diet, people are healing these diseases. And my goal is to prove it scientifically, to get the evidence out there to help people who are ready to get back to living their life.
I'm going to be so grateful when this comes out, because I suffered from reactive hypoglycemia for 10 years, and I went in and they would just run like my blood sugar, and they'd be like, your blood sugar's fine, your A1C was fine. They never ran my insulin. And it wasn't until I went carnivore that I stopped having all of these blood sugar drops. And so I just feel for every person out there who has diabetes. And now it's like every day I'm hearing of a new child that has type 1 diabetes. I mean, this is becoming common.
Yeah,
so this is fantastic. And we have the sweetest comments in here. One person said, "Low Carb USA in your future with Ben Bigman and Dave Feldman."
I would cry if that day ever came. Ben Bigman is amazing.
It will. This is an amazing community, and we need people like you.
Well, thank you.
So we do have a question here. So I'm not sure if you've looked into this, but this is Charlie. Charlie would like to know, do you find that some carnivores have longer lived red blood cells, which might inflate A1C values? My A1C was stubborn at 5.7, but glycated albumin showed 11.7%, well below pre-diabetes.
Absolutely. So it's hard to say yes, I find some carnivores that have lived, have longer red blood cell lives, because I haven't reached that point in my own research. However, I know there are some people out there, I know Judy Cho has talked about this, but the A1C, or the life of the red blood cell, is living longer than that standard 2 to 3 months for people who are on a standard diet. So what's happening is, once the glucose is bound to the cell, right, that sucker is not coming off there. So essentially you have your red blood cells and they're dying off every 2 to 3 months. So you can have pretty awful glycemic control and truly just maintain whatever level you're at. So when you're looking at the actual process of going from normal glycemia to insulin resistance and getting into that state where your A1C is elevated, the research is actually showing that it can take up to 13 years. So 13 years of damaging your tissues before even getting like a marker of, hey, you're pre-diabetic, right? So once the A1C, or once the glucose has bound to the cell, it's not coming off. So when you're switching to a carnivore diet, or even on a carnivore diet for a couple of months, you've got these red blood cells who are living longer, who still have that bound glucose, and it can cause the inflated A1C readings. So, and I was actually talking to one of my friends, my carnivore friend, 2 or 3 days ago about this. And I think when we're on the carnivore diet, if you have A1C concerns, it might be a challenge to look at like those first 3 to 6 months as a appropriate reflection. However, despite being on carnivore, your blood cells aren't going to live forever, right? So I think it's something to note, right? And then maybe look at the 6 to 12 month range, or even 12 and beyond, right? So depending on what that A1C is, I'm predicting it's going to take a while to see it come down, and like a falsely elevated reading, just because we can't get the glucose off those cells. But by not having the insulin response, which is why I want to look at insulin levels as well. Much better indicator of where your glucose control is going to be.
Okay, thank you.
That is so great. How can we help you with your research as a community? Are you taking participants at this time?
I cannot officially take or recruit participants at this time. I'm still in the dissertation proposal phase, which means that I'm still crafting and designing my study and writing this big book about it, which is a lot of fun for people like me who love to read the literature and write about it. So I'm really enjoying this phase that I'm in right now. But I'm really going to need people to enroll in this study. Like, the carnivore community is huge, and I will be posting on my Instagram and I know I'm in World Carnivore Tribe on Facebook, and of course talking with my friends, you guys here, and trying to just get the word out that I am in the recruitment phase. Once that day officially gets here, there won't be any personal information that is disclosed, but I will need, I'll need you to report your A1C and your insulin levels on like an actual, this is my blood work and this is me. And so I need actual documentation of that, which for a lot of people might be hard, but I need a minimum of 208 participants, but my goal is to get a whole lot more than that, because I know that this community is incredible and everyone here is so conscious about their blood work, and how they've gotten here is usually from a red flag on a metabolic lab report. So hopefully it won't be the biggest challenge, and if it is, I might just find a hole and cry in it.
I know we all have a family member that we want to participate in your study, you know?
Yeah. Right?
Yeah. So, but that's what I'll need. And I'm not there yet. I legally can't even like start a list or anything like that. I have to get through the IRB process, which I'm anticipating at the end of summer. I can't give an official date or anything like that yet, but my anticipation is that come August, September, please be on the lookout. Follow my account. I'll be posting about it almost daily to try to get everybody I possibly can.
Awesome.
That is so fantastic. You are helping our community more than you even know, which is so great. Could you tell us a little bit about your podcast? Because I do know you have one, and I want to shout it out because I know you have a YouTube channel also, but it's still a baby.
It is a baby.
I've been seeing that you've been posting more on your podcast, so I'd love to know a little bit about that, what you talk about.
Yeah, so the podcast is there. I started it in June when I moved and got settled here. And my goal is for that to be a really great source of information. And what I've tried to do up until this point, I think I have like 5 or 6 episodes, something really small like that. Oh gosh, there it is. Thank you for that. It's called the Hollistic Carnivore, just like all of my other handles, because through my integrative and functional education and just my own personal philosophical paradigm on life, I think carnivore is a really holistic way of living, and just living in a really natural way is something that I'm very passionate about. So the Holistic Carnivore, I have a couple of episodes, and what I've done up until this point is I've kind of tried to start at the beginning and lay that foundation of who I am, what I do, basically what I do on these calls, and explain what functional medicine is and explain what functional nutrition is, and talk about a little bit of how we've gotten to where we are today and what dietary, practices existed in the ancestral times and what that looked like for, the pre-humans or the early humans, whatever you believe, and kind of introducing this shift from conventional medicine to functional medicine. And I'm about to tap into getting into the carnivore diet and how it's holistic. And I really hope that this is going to become a weekly podcast. But truth be told, I started this with really high hopes and a lot of naivety in thinking that I could get in front of this microphone and talk about this and sound informative and educated and not like a babbling baboon on the microphone. And that's what I feel like alcoholic most of the time. And so this is out there. I've thought about deleting it so many times, truth be told, but I'm not going to, and I'm trying to grow it. So please be patient with me. I am writing a PhD dissertation over here and raising 2 kids and planning another move. So it's been a slow grow and a slow burn, but it's there, and I hope it's helpful right now as it is, and I hope that it'll be a place of information in the future moving forward.
You are such a busy mom.
Right?
Did you just say you guys are moving too, or you're?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's kind of our thing, I guess. I've been on this like grand life mission of finding like the place that feels like home. I've never truly felt that euphoric sense of belonging anywhere, and I've learned what I don't like, and I'm really, really into Abraham Maslow's like hierarchy of needs and the importance of aesthetic needs and like your environment. And I talk about this on the podcast on some episode. Don't ask me which one it is. But I talk about and I truly believe in the importance of being sure to draw energy and inspiration and that sense of peace and stillness from your environment. It's so important for your mental health, your physical health, your well-being. I mean, I could talk forever about the hierarchy of needs, but I've been on this mission to find home and to fulfill my aesthetic needs. And praise the Lord, I have finally found it. And I am so excited. We've moved 10 times in the past 10 years. And in 53 days, I move again to hopefully the last town ever.
And where is it? So
It
we
is
can all
a
move
big,
there.
beautiful surprise, Adrian.
Okay. I'm so excited for
Okay,
you.
well, we're going to stay tuned.
Yes, yes. But yeah, I am moving, and I've been working full time as a high school teacher throughout the past couple of years. And so
Wow.
busy. I don't know what the break is. So
I think a busy life is a life full of purpose and excitement. And I'm just so happy for you. And I noticed a few times that you're putting yourself down. That's why I brought your podcast out. I'm trying to boost your confidence. Everyone here is so wowed by your intelligence, your humor, and your humbleness. So please.
you're so sweet.
I mean
Thank
it
you.
though. I'm not.
It's hard. I mean, even coming and getting on these shows, I mean, you guys saw me beforehand. I'm jumping around. I'm nervous. I'm wiping the sweat off my hands. It is hard to put yourself out there, and you have people who are watching and listening at all times in this sense of, I don't want to be an influencer, but I want to help educate people. And there's a pressure that comes with that, especially when I have PhD in my name, and it's really hard to get over those mental barriers. And that's been my biggest challenge. Like it is no joke putting yourself out here. You can be a keyboard warrior all you want and be, bold in the comments and act like you know what you're talking about, but to like get up here and get on camera and have no opportunity to filter or to go back and edit yourself and to make sure that what you're saying is politically correct and not going to offend anybody, because nobody wants to do that. It is hard as Hades. And like, I commend all of you because you're out here and you are doing it and you are showing up consistently for your audience. And that's just incredible.
Aw, thank you. Well, Courtney, we have a meaty wheel that we like to spin around here. And I think it's about time that I brought that up. So
I don't know what this is.
Well, here it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spin our Lioness Lifestyle Live wheel, and you are going to get a random question that we would love for you to answer.
I
don't get to tap it? That's not cool.
This is fun.
I can't even spin the wheel myself.
This is the fun part of the show.
It is totally fun. So we hunted down a meaty question for you, and here it is. How do you handle meal planning and preparation on a carnivore diet? And do you find it challenging or time consuming?
Oh my God, easy question. Okay, listen, I've already explained to you that I would sit there and calculate every single micro and macronutrient needed for myself, my husband, my athletic lifestyle, my lifting goals, my building goals, all of the things, and my 2 children who are at various ages on a plant-based diet. Okay, listen, I can cook up 2 pounds of red meat and call it a day. Okay. If it is lean, we're having eggs. If it's steak, we're cooking it in butter. We're going to add the fat. It is so, so, so easy. How do I plan it? I don't. I reach in the freezer and let the freezer tell me what I want for dinner. Okay. I do not have time anymore to sit and think about the week ahead. And this is breakfast and this is lunch and this is dinner. No, my 6-year-old won't eat anything in the morning besides bacon. Like, so I get to feed my kid loads of bacon and send him off to school. You know what? I'd rather feed him a load of bacon than feed him a load of crap and cereal. It's not challenging. It is not time consuming. However, I think for people who are just getting started in this way of eating, it can be really overwhelming. And I've helped a lot of people transition from standard American to carnivore or keto to carnivore. That's what I do. And it can be really overwhelming and they can really worry about these types of things. But once you kind of figure out your personal needs between protein and fat, and you understand what your body is processing, right? We all know what too much fat does. We all know what too much protein does. And once you kind of figure out the fine tuning for your own body, it gets so much easier. It gets so much easier, but really you just want to balance it. And I think living in the 70-30 ratio is a really great place to start for everybody. And I don't know. It's been a cakewalk since I went carnivore. Thank you for the lucky question.
Yeah, I love how a carnivore's just simplified it for you, because I can't admit, like, I've tracked on carnivore, but it's not like what you're talking about. You know, I've tracked when I was trying to learn about, how much is this much fat or that much protein, but it's nothing like what you're talking about. And I can't imagine going into that amount of detail. So I'm very happy to hear that it's much more simplified for you now. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, if you're not full, eat more. Cook more than you think you're going to eat. I know. It's like, I think the fear of like people wanting to get it right, and you wouldn't sit down with a pizza and question, well, how much of this am I going to eat? Like, you eat until you're like, oh, I can't eat anymore, right? So it's kind of the same thing. Like, you don't want to get to that point where you feel like you're going to vomit, but over time, you start to learn your body's hunger and fullness cues, which I think is a really powerful moment when you first realize it. It can take a while before you realize it. And I think that can be an obstacle for a lot of people in the transition because they don't know how much is enough or how much is too much. And especially if they've been chronically overeating or chronically dieting, right? Your ability to consume like a pound of red meat at every meal or twice a day, it can be a challenge, right? So you kind of have to build yourself up and think about whether you want to eat once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day, and then just kind of go from there, right? I've never tried anything. Yeah. I love that for you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I want to say, let's be conscious of everyone's time. Maybe we should end with a roar.
Oh, we need to end with a roar for sure. So, Adrian.
Oh, yes. All right. 3, 2, 1.
Roar! Everyone watching, put your roars in the chat. We would love to see your roars as well. Let's go.
Do this.
There we go. Oh, Bruce is growling. I love it, Bruce. Yes.
Thank you, Gail.
Eric's here. Eric, I love when you come in with the roar, picanha roar. Jay is also enjoying some picanha this evening, which is my absolute fave.
I did it. I got the banner on time.
Officially obsessed.
I feel you with the meow.
Greg is here. Greg. Oh, hi, Cammie. Greg is here meowing. Thank you, Greg.
Love participation. Thank you so much, everyone.
All right,
Thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate
coming on. This was amazing, and we're really excited to have you in our community.
My cheeks hurt from smiling so much. Thank you.
I'm so sorry.
For all you shared, because it's so many.
All right. Well, we will see you guys next Tuesday. We will have another awesome guest for you. So have a great week, and we will see you then, I guess. Bye, everybody.